The Democratic Alliance this morning hosts a briefing to update the media and the public on its preparations ahead of next year's local government elections. They say they will also talk about other political developments as well, and this comes after the party held its federal council meeting. The body is the highest decision-making structure in between the party's conferences. And Newzroom Afrika senior politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo is at Nkululeko House in Bruma in Johannesburg for us this morning. Ziyanda, good morning. Police raids on its mayoral committee members to now declaring a formal GNU dispute over the expropriation bill and the NHI. This briefing promises to be anything but vanilla. Tell us more.
Absolutely, Iman. Not only that, they have their Congress next year where they'll be electing new leadership. And of course, as you've mentioned, that dispute within the Government of National Unity over the Expropriation Act. You would have heard John Steenhuisen, the federal leader, invoking clause 19.3 of the Statement of Intent. So what's to happen? It will be a very interesting day because the ANC has also just announced that it will be having a briefing at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So there'll probably be lots to respond to, but let's talk now to Willie Aucamp, the national spokesperson of the party. What was the nature of the meeting? I mean, I'm not trying to scupper the briefing, but the nature of the Federal Council meeting where critical decisions are always taken.
Good morning. The Federal Council is the highest decision-making body in between Congresses. We had a meeting yesterday of the Federal Council, and the two main items was firstly the selection process for candidates for the upcoming municipal elections. We know that the Democratic Alliance is world-renowned for our thorough process and program when it comes to the selection of candidates. So that process has been explained and has been approved. So we are looking forward to that program opening on the 1st of March this year for applicants that want to become councillors for the Democratic Alliance. So that was the one part. The other part was a discussion of the position of the Democratic Alliance within the GNU, especially after the signing of the expropriation bill and then the subsequent invoking of Section 19.3 of the Memorandum of Understanding.
Of course, Section 19.3, for those who aren't aware, it deals with, sufficient consensus when it comes to these issues. 60% of parties represented in the National Assembly having to agree. But we would have heard Fikile Mbalula from the ANC, the Secretary General, is speaking about how Section 19, Clause 19, I beg your pardon, does not speak to bills that have already been passed, and therefore the President and Parliament cannot remit particular bills. Your response to that?
Well, even if that is so, and we do not agree, but even if that is so, with the expropriation bill, the President had a minister that advised him on the back of legal advice that he got that there are several clauses within the expropriation bill that will not meet constitutional muster. It is the job of the minister to advise the President. The President ignored that advice and unfortunately did not do what the minister asked. We asked that that bill be sent back to the National Assembly. The clauses that had constitutional problems, we could have ironed out very quickly in the National Assembly and then brought that bill back to the President to sign. The President could as well, from his side, send it to the Constitutional Court and ask them to give judgment on the constitutionality thereof. When it comes to the NHI, for example, the NHI, the Bella Bill and the Expropriation Bill are all bills that were signed in and agreed to in the previous Parliament. But when it comes to the NHI must be reflected in the medium-term development plan. Now, that medium-term development plan, there must be sufficient consensus in terms of Clause 19.3. So we are insisting that when it comes to the NHI, that sufficient consensus must and should apply. And even if Mr. Mbalula thinks that other acts does not apply to Section 19.3, we must from now on have an understanding within this GNU that the ANC does not govern anymore alone. They must come to that realization. Everybody should also know that they might not necessarily all the time get what they want. We've got to work together. And it's time that the President must do everything in his power to try and save this GNU as well. We cannot have the President standing on Davos in the international arena and brag about the accomplishments of this GNU, But back at home, he's just steamrolling through old ANC ideologies. It will not happen on our watch. We will not allow that. We will insist on sufficient consensus being reached with all decisions within the GNU.
Vincent Magwenya, the president's spokesperson, quoted in News 24 this morning saying that Dean McPherson, who's your deployee in the government, he's the Public Works Minister, would have had enough time to raise his concerns because there was communication between the president and McPherson before that bill was assented. So in other words, who is lying here? Is Vincent Magwenya lying? Was Dean McPherson not on the ball in this case?
Dean McPherson was totally on the ball. He obtained a legal opinion from some of the best legal minds with regards to constitutionality in South Africa. He then presented that legal opinion to the president with a letter from himself stating what his advice is. And his advice was that the president send the bill back to Parliament. The president then ignored that advice, and he decided to sign the bill without even letting the minister know that I'm going to sign this bill on that day, and that is the situation. So he is totally on the ball, and Minister Dean McPherson came out and said that under his watch, as the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, there will be no expropriation of land without compensation. He must now go and draft the norm standards and the regulations for that bill. So we'll have to see and look what's going to happen there. But I can promise you that Minister Dean McPherson, as any other DA minister, were totally on the ball when it comes to this.
All right, Willie Aucamp there, the DA national spokesperson. Tomorrow, Iman, there's also a cabinet lekgotla, which we understand will be an opportunity then to also thrash out these issues, in particular when it comes to this land expropriation bill. The president seemingly planning to use that moment to talk about this. You'll know that at the cabinet lekgotla, they're still finalizing the medium-term development plan, which will be the plan for the cabinet for the next 5 years. And this is certainly going to be one of those hard topics that will be on the agenda tomorrow.